Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at Kraven the Hunter. Sony's new Spider-Verse villain movie is out, and reportedly the last, or so I've heard. We're going to get into it and talk in our review for Kraven in just a minute. We're also going to take a look at The Piano Lesson. This is Netflix feature based on an August Wilson play from a couple of Denzel Washington's sons, actually. Malcolm Washington directed, stars John David Washington. Actually a good time. Worth sticking around for. Stick around for the review. We're going to talk about our top 10 films of the year, at least as good as we know them, because there's definitely still some films coming out this holiday that we're going to see in our next episode. Maybe we'll revisit, but for now, I think our lists are pretty firm. We've been hard at work, irons in the fire, figuring out what exactly we got. I think we got our top 10s down pat, and also maybe a look at our top 5 of the decade that we know so far. I don't know. We were workshopping it. All right, we might get into it. We're going to take a look at some news, and before we get to everything we need to talk about, what do we watch this week? And interestingly, I've watched a couple Christmas movies. More importantly, Andy played this sort of kind of funny game at a Christmas party that we've been exploring off mic, and I wanted to bring it up here on the show. Andy, what did you do this week? What is this thing?
So I was at a Christmas party over the weekend, and one of the games that we played was called a Hallmark movie bingo. And so what we did is we watched a Hallmark Christmas movie, and we all had bingo cards with different cliches, and we played bingo. And so it was things like, kids running through the scene, hopeless romantic character, town comes together, Christmas tree farm, lead appears in red coat, hot guy in flannel, like all these different kinds of cliches you see. And it was a lot of fun. And funny enough, most people filled out their cards within like the first 20 minutes. And then it was waiting the rest of the movie to see who would be a winner. But it was a lot of fun. And the two movies we watched were Christmas Land from 2015 and one called Noel Next Door, which was kind of a take on You've Got Mail with it set in Christmas.
I think it's way too easy for like film bros and podcast dudes like us to get, chummy about Christmas movies and cheesy ones in particular on Netflix and Hallmark. Like, oh, those movies are boring and they're trite and they're just made to make money really fast and quick buck. Totally. Absolutely, I hear all that. But also, like, they're just the right kind of cheesy and fun and, like, the perfect kind of movie to throw on with your friends. In the same way that, like, a cheesy horror movie is great for a Halloween party, right? Like, that sounds like a delight. Did you win Hallmark movie bingo?
No, I was so close. I needed Enemies to Lovers and one other space. I was so close. The thing is, like, that's an entire genre. So, like, if your movie just is not about that, you're never getting it. Like, that was not a plot point in the first one. It was in the second one, however.
Right, you're gonna fill out most of that card in like the first few minutes of just like setting and characters. That's awesome.
And we also, as we were, because the person who made the cards just kind of came up with these on their own, and so as we were watching, then we came up with even more cliches and things. It was like inspirational speech and misunderstanding, those kinds of things. It was a lot of fun.
Sure. What were the movies?
Christmas Land and Noel Next Door. And the thing about Christmas Land is the lead actress, it starts with a flashback scene, which you totally cannot tell is a flashback scene. Supposed to be 25 years in the past. She plays her own grandmother. It's like the same actress. Yeah. They just put a blonde wig on her and she just refers to this little girl as her granddaughter, but it's clearly the same actress.
Right. Like so obviously the same person. That's awesome. That's like has a character in Midnight Mass, that Mike Flanagan show on Netflix. Like in one of the early episodes, it's so obviously a woman in like old person makeup. It's like, what's that character's deal? And then you find out later, like, oh, there's a whole reason for that. That makes sense. Shout out to just like using the actress twice. She could play her grandma. It's perfect. You don't have to get lookalikes. You can just dress her up. You got a good person in the makeup department. They're gonna take care of it.
Also, she's like, she looks like a 30-year-old grandmother as well. Like she doesn't look like old. They haven't aged her up at all. She's just like in a blonde wig and 30 years old. It was really funny.
I watched Slightly Finer Christmas Fare this week. I watched the Santa Claus 1 and 2 on Disney Plus, which are both mid. I wish I liked those movies more than I do, but I don't. And every year I watch them thinking like maybe I'll see some of the holiday magic that people love, but I think it's just nostalgia. They're both mid. I think 2 might be better than 1. I don't know. The Green Knight, which is a pleasure, right? A24. We wanted to watch it in a Christmas game sort of feature. And National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which I've seen so many times. I don't think there's anything new I could possibly like mine from that gem of a movie. Like I think I've seen it all. I think I've done it all. I gotta find some like lately. What I've been watching for Christmas stuff is I've been going back to like these 4 hour blocks of retro cartoons and like children's programming, like on YouTube. It'll be like 4 hours of 90s Nickelodeon Christmas cartoons. And it's just a bunch of like Christmas specials from like Hey Arnold and Doug. And it's great. But this is a movie podcast. We don't talk about TV. Speaking of TV, we got to talk about where the Oscars are live streaming. We've complained about this for years. We finally have a destination. The Oscars are going to be streaming this year. Where are they going to be streaming, Andy?
Disney's finally struck up a deal with whoever to finally stream the Oscars. We've said this about all these award shows because they all just had TV deals and they would never stream anywhere. And that's when no one watches them because it's impossible. You have to pay like a $60 to $80 a month TV subscription to see them, and no one's going to pay that. And so finally, they are going to stream on Hulu and possibly Disney Plus, or maybe it's just Hulu. But you'll be able to stream them live, and that's on March 2nd, 2025. And this actually follows the Golden Globes, which are also going to stream on Paramount Plus. And so we're seeing a trend now that the studios are finally jumping on.
I remember a few years ago when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars, like hearing about it that night and looking at Twitter and trying to find clips, and all you could find was like people recording their televisions because there was just no way to get the Oscars into any kind of computer or like streaming device. It was strictly on television. That was it. And their numbers have been struggling. Like year over year, they're struggling to get people to watch, to engage. We've talked about it way too long on this podcast. Like there is absolutely no reason this show shouldn't be available to stream. Finally it is, and thank God. The telecast will be available the next day. It'll be streamed live for subscribers, for anybody who wants to tune in. Much higher chance that I end up watching, that you end up watching, like that anybody tunes in. I bet their numbers go way up. Like it just seems like a W all around, right? What are they scared of? Losing ad dollars? Like that's not what's important. What's important is platforming films and creators. Hopefully, this accomplishes that. This is a far too long time coming, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it allows you a chance to be part of the internet zeitgeist, because when people can watch and stream, then they can have commentary, have cut clips, make memes, like all of that. You miss out on all that kind of online culture if your show is hard to watch and find.
That's right. Will Smith slaps anybody again. Now you're going to get a GIF in 4K. That's very exciting. Another story this week. Austin Butler is going to be in Luca Guadagnino's next movie, which is exciting. If you listened last week when we talked about Luca Guadagnino's new movie, what is this film going to be, Andy?
So it is not a remake of the original film, which was made in 2000, which starred, of course, Christian Bale in one of his iconic roles in American Psycho, based on the novel by Chuck Palahniuk. And so this is going to be kind of a new adaptation of the source material of the novel, which, of course, it takes place in the 1980s with these Wall Street guys and but Christian Bale plays Patrick Bateman, who's a serial killer and is like a representative of this 80s yuppie lifestyle. So I'll be interested to see what Guadagnino does, if he's going to set it in that same time period, or maybe he's going to update it, or kind of what he's going to do. I think Austin Butler's an incredible pick for this. He can do anything. He can disappear into the role. He can make it his own. And that's what you really need for this.
Yeah, and Guadagnino is like a great pick for director. Like he seems to be genre proof right now. He can do queer stories, he can do romances, he can do horror. He's done adaptations. Suspiria and Bones and All were both very inspired. And for anybody who's thinking like, oh my God, do we need another remake of another thing? Like I think Guadagnino is a far cry from that, right? Like his Suspiria adaptation is very different from the original film. Saying specifically that he's going back to the book and adapting that directly, like already is saying, hey, this is going to be different. And I think that's exciting. And in the same way, like Butler's exciting casting. It's funny because Jacob Elordi was also like circling the role.
He was the front runner, allegedly.
Yeah. And both of these guys played Elvis and in their own ways. And now like they're both competing for the same role again, like this slick back haired white dude. I don't know. I think it's a banger. I like American Psycho. I like that old Bell film. I like Guadagnino. Like this is all exciting for me. How about you, Andy?
Yeah, I'm stoked for it. Like I said, I think it's inspired casting, inspired also directing. Of course, Luca Guadagnino, who took something like Suspiria and made it his own. He can't. His films don't always connect with people, but man, he's going to swing for the fences and he's going to do his own thing and he's going to bring you something that you haven't seen before.
Absolutely. Speaking of something we haven't seen before, DC has just set a Batman film, a Batman villain film, we should say, with a scriptwriter who's very exciting. Very exciting. I actually just mentioned him already on this podcast, and I forgot that I'd done that. That wasn't a setup. That was all natural. It's just somebody I talk about in conversation. Andy, what is this movie?
So there's been a lot of rumors about what kind of movies we're going to get in this new DC universe, what kind of villains, and there were some rumors that we might get the villain Clayface into one of these Batman or Superman films, and it turns out he's going to get his own movie, directed by or written by Mike Flanagan, who of course did Doctor Sleep, Midnight Mass, has done a lot of these horror things recently, both TV and film. And so we don't really have a lot of details, but Clayface is, if you don't know, he's from the Batman Rogues Gallery. His name is Basil Carlo, and he's an actor who's kind of struggling. And in the comics and in this, he was famously adapted in the Batman the Animated TV series, where he kind of uses this banned chemical stuff to make himself look better or change his appearance, and it eventually kind of poisons him and he becomes this monster. So it's a real horror kind of premise, and that's what they're going in. They're writing this as a horror tragedy. It has a little bit smaller budget. They're looking at a $40 million budget, which is right. That's a mid-level movie. That's not $200 million special effects thing. So looks like it'll be a real kind of character study. I'm excited for that.
It's basically guaranteed to be a hit, wall to wall gas. And I say that sarcastically, but also like a little bit as a fan, like with certainty. Like, Mike Flanagan is awesome. He's an awesome director. He's an awesome writer. The man's got vision. He's already tackling Exorcist for Blumhouse, and I think that'll be a better version than what they had previous. But more importantly, his previous works on Netflix is exceptional. Dr. Sleep is great. He tweeted about this movie in 2021. He said he was really keen to do a standalone Clayface movie as a horror thriller tragedy. So he's been sitting on this for a minute. And James Gunn, new head of DC Studios, has said that he wants DC to be a place where anybody can come tell stories. He wants to be doing creator-forward features, right? Like Matt Reeves' The Batman, who is, of course, producing this Clayface feature. Additionally, Andy already mentioned, but in case you missed it, the budget. It's a $40 million picture. That's a cheap movie nowadays. And specifically, like, that's a good budget for a movie you don't know is going to work or not. Like, our American audience is going to go see Clayface? I don't know. But I'll bet comic book fans plus Mike Flanagan fans plus maybe horror thriller fans, like, yeah, you'll probably make 40 million back. Throw in a little bit extra marketing, like, all but guaranteed to at least do well. And like that's good strategy. Like it's a far cry from Marvel, who seems to be just doing like has to be a banger, spend 200 million on marketing or else we're doomed, like films, which is like bonkers, just crazy. Like this is much more like tempered, much more even keel. Like I think it's smart. It's humble, and that's the best place to come at like an odd villain film. Funny because we're also going to talk about Kraven the Hunter in a minute, which is not humble at all. But that's Clayface for you.
Well, also what James Gunn has said alongside this is that what they're doing differently from Marvel is they're not looking into serialized storytelling, and what I mean by that is that Marvel kind of became this thing where like a TV show where you got to see every episode to know what's going on, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to have more interconnected universe, something that's more like Star Wars, where you can have all different kinds of movies. You can have something that's family friendly, or something that appeals to everyone like Superman, or something more adult like Creature Commandos, or something that's horror, or something that's comedy. He wants to be able to do different kinds of project, and for everything not to just depend on what came before it. And I think that's a way to be a lot safer, and a way to succeed in kind of this post-pandemic filmmaking era.
Yeah, Gunn's got big vision, which has been made evident also in our next story regarding the debut of our first Superman poster, which is real cool looking, man. Real good. Got a little bit of score, a little bit of video, and reportedly a trailer dropping this Thursday. Andy, what do you know about Superman?
Man, so I woke I woke up every time I wake up. The first thing I do is check Twitter to see if there's film news, and
It's
sure enough,
like
that's what happened. Yeah,
it's like smoke. It's like picking up a cigarette from the night before, right off the ashtray, just lighting it right back up. Like first things first. Whip open Twitter.
yeah, and I'm
Golly.
I'm I'm rarely disappointed because then you're the first to see some of the stuff. And one of those things was this post that was this new poster of Superman, where he's just looking up, flying into the air. But most importantly, it had a little bit of the score by I think it's Murphy, John Murphy, maybe. Murphy is the composer's last name, and the score, which we get, it's a mix of it's something new, a little bit of legacy. It's got a little bit of the John Williams theme in there, with the tagline "Look Up." And man, I had chills, and then we got another post that said trailer was coming Thursday morning. And man, that's a great tagline. I heard someone say, it's great because you can whisper it, "Look up," and I think it's brilliant what they're doing. People are really excited for this, and it's a kind of hype you need for this movie to succeed.
Yeah, man. Like Superman looks real cool. Like I'm looking forward to this trailer. If the trailer, I mean, obviously we're gonna get a few trailers before the film comes out, but this kind of first look we're gonna be getting here, like if this thing sticks the landing, I think we're looking forward to a solid opening weekend. I think people really want something different. I think people really want something fresh. I think whether they know it or not, I think especially American audiences like are hungry for some sort of fresh spin on the comic book formula and like a refreshing take on Superman from James Gunn, a man who seemingly cannot miss in the comic book genre, is going to be a hit. Like I know we don't talk about TV here on the show, but Andy and I've been watching Creature Commandos, their animated series on HBO. James Gunn's got 3 or 4 episodes out right now. Like it's great, dude. Like even the weird offshoot cartoons James Gunn puts out are great. So I have no reason to think this won't be a banger. It's going to be different, but it's going to be good. I hope. Anyway, so yeah, I'm on the hype train for Superman. How about you, Andy?
Mm-hmm. I'm super excited. Hype train is left the station. It's in orbit. And what James Gunn has said about this is that he wants to create a character that's inspirational and that sees the good in people and humankind. And that's exactly what Superman is. And that's the point that a lot of people miss. Most notoriously, Zack Snyder. He took Superman and he was like, what if Superman was something else entirely?
What if
What if
a
it was
god?
what if he was this dark and gritty? And it's just like, I mean, that's a take, but you totally miss why this character has been around for 70, 80 years and why he's such like a staple of American culture and such an icon. And it seems like James Gunn is capturing again what that is. And I'm definitely excited to see it.
Trailer's coming Thursday. We will not be doing a show immediately following that. It'll be a minute before you hear from us again because that's how the show goes. Typically, they come out on Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays, based on my recent messy work schedule. But outside of that, we will follow up on Superman in the next episode. So if you want to hear our takes then, just hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and give us a subby, and we'll swing back around. We'll tell you what we think. We'll keep you posted. Also, follow us on social media. One more story before we jump into Kraven the Hunter. We're gonna talk about the box office. Andy, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on at the box office this week?
So sometimes we watch things that aren't super good or that we don't hear good things about for the love of the game. We watch it so you don't have to. And one of those things is Kraven the Hunter, which totally bombed at $11 million opening, which is abysmally small. 26 million worldwide on against $100 million budget. So expensive movie for Sony. It's real bad. The Lord of the Rings animated film, War of the Rohirrim, also struggled with just about 5 million on its open. However, Moana 2 opened up to 700 million on not open, but in its third weekend, 700 million. On its way to a Billy. We'll see if it still has the leg. It's got a lot of competition coming up in the next couple of weeks. Wicked also passed the $500 million budget, so it's doing well. Gladiator 2 passed 400 million. So those Thanksgiving offerings are doing really well. Kraven's bomb, huge bomb.
Raven's a huge bomb. I'm excited that we're talking about it. You're absolutely right. Like sometimes we see films just for the love of the game, and that was Kraven. If there's anything I've learned from Sony's like Spider-Verse movie films here, it's that I think I've learned to almost get excited for how bad something's going to be. And that was something I was kind of good at before, but it was a different sort of energy walking into Kraven the Hunter this weekend, knowing that I was going to be in the theater completely alone, right? Knowing that nobody else would be in there to watch that bomb but me. It was a good time. But meanwhile, we covered Moana 2 previously on the episode, on the show, and Wicked. Both great. Moana 2, I don't think is as good as Wicked. For my money, I'd spend more time there, but clearly the rest of the country does not feel that way. Moana 2 is continuing to steamroll. You know, it'd be easy to stand on my film soapbox here that I brought myself to my own podcast and say that Moana 2 has no cultural impact. Who cares, right? Who's ever going to look back and think fondly of Moana 2? But like, clearly Disney's not too concerned about that. We talked about this last week on the podcast when I also brought my Disney soapbox. Like, Disney is just making money, right? Like, that's the move. They're a business. They got to make bank. Clearly the sequels make money. That's what they're going to do. Not culturally intriguing, I think, for the rest of us, but hey, for the children, it's a hit. And that's what's important. Sony wishes they could get some of the buzz from Moana 2, but inexplicably, Kraven isn't even PG-13. This film's rated R, which I forgot and did not know until I was watching it and realized that there's an excessive number of F-bombs in it. And that was the tip-off, like, oh no, Sony made this an R-rated feature? Who did they think was going to come to this thing, Andy?
Well, I think they just swung for it. They thought they're trying to hop on the John Wick train. Like, we'll talk about this a little bit more. This movie seemed to kind of be embarrassed to be a comic book movie, and it was trying to be more of like a political assassination style, John Wick style violence, and so it goes over the top. Maybe they just thought they could tap into that same audience.
Well, tap they did not. Meanwhile, I saw that Queer is out, but not in many cinemas, which is why we didn't cover it on the show. I definitely got to catch that at some point. Hopefully in the coming weeks we can like catch a screening of it somewhere or catch it on VOD, because I mean, it's new Luca Guadagnino. He's good enough to make the news this week. We talked about Austin Butler being in his new movie, so I'd like to check that out. Otherwise, you know, just the downslide from like Thanksgiving and ramping up right before Christmas, right? We got Mufasa and Sonic 3 coming out. We got Nosferatu and A Complete Unknown and Baby Girl. Like, obviously, the box office is brewing. Certainly, we're about to get into it for the holiday, and then we're going to slump over, hungover, and broken into January, like the beginning of every good year in film, I think. Any other stories on the box office before we get to Kraven the Hunter? Andy, you're taking the summary. I hope you're ready to swing for the fences with this one.
I'm ready.
Andy, what would you recommend the box office? Andy, please take it away.
Kraven the Hunter. So this is the latest film in the Sony Marvel Cinematic Universe. Previously, we had Madam Web, which was its own disaster, and just when we thought comic book movies couldn't get anywhere, so Sony comes and outdoes themselves. Kraven the Hunter stars Aaron Taylor Johnson as Sergei Kravinoff / Kraven / the Hunter / Kraven the Hunter. The film opens with him infiltrating this high security Russian prison, executing an arms dealer of some sort, escaping mysteriously. And then we find out he's got a list. He's checking it twice, looking for bad guys to knock off. And then we actually jump back to his childhood, where we get the whole entire first act is like backstory, and it's all the young versions of the kids. But he's involved in a hunting accident on safari in Africa, nearly killed by a lion, gets these powers of the beast where he has super strength and can run and jump and all those things. And then we finally jump back, and there's just a ton going on. He's chasing down bad guys are chasing down him. He's trying to save his brother. People are trying to kidnap his brother. Russell Crowe is their father, who's kind of doing both. He's also a bad guy in this underworld. Alessandro Nivola is in it as the Rhino, fitting in. There's a ton going on. It's a little too long. This is also directed by J.C. Chandor, which I love his movie, A Most Violent Year from 2014. We also reviewed his Triple Frontier, which was on Netflix about 5 years ago. I'm sorry to see him come down to this, but a lot to talk about. Zach, what did you think of Kraven the Hunter?
I really appreciate your sympathy for director J.C. Chandor. You're like, I'm so sorry. He's fallen from grace to Kraven the Hunter. It's terrible. The movie's terrible. Kraven the Hunter's terrible. It's terrible for a number of reasons. Like, structurally, it doesn't work. The characters are paper thin. The origin story is no fun. the violence is like overwrought and mostly like CGI blood, and most of the F bombs are put in post. Like it's like they forced it to be rated R. Like somebody thought maybe it'll do better. Like it's just such a train wreck from start to finish. And like charm, it doesn't even have like the charm of the Madam Web cast. Like at least Dakota Johnson was like funny. Like at least she seemed to kind of get the assignment. And at least like Goofy Sydney Sweeney is uniquely charming for what she's doing in that movie, but like here you don't get any of that. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson is bad, Russell Crowe is hilariously bad. It's just bad all around. Like Kraven the Hunter is such a train wreck. Where do we
Crowe's
jump at?
doing a good accent. Let's start with
Crowe's so
performances. So yeah,
funny in this movie. Oh,
Russell Crowe has reached that stage in his career where he's like, I'm going to sit behind a desk for everything, and you're going to pay me a bunch of money. He's the patriarch of this family, very tough on Sergei. Calls his other son, I can't remember the other one, Dimitri. He calls him
Dimitri.
weak and all these things, and he's also an arms dealer of some sort. His Russian accent is probably the best. It's the most consistent. The sons do not have Russian accents, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, who is British, his American accent's kind of all over the place. It kind of slips in and out. It's kind of funny. Oscar winner Ariana DeBose is in this. She won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. Incredible role. And she's kind of been relegated to these terrible movies. She needs a new agent because she's a huge talent,
Yeah.
but not in this. It's bad. Alessandro Nivola, I think, is doing the best as the Rhino character, and a wild Christopher Abbott appearing late in the movie. Which I saw this post that says if Christopher Abbott shows up in your movie late, it's a bad for everyone.
Yeah, it's over. Oh, dude. Okay, so I completely forgot anybody of like real stature was in this movie, which is why it was so funny when like Russell Crowe shows up. Because you're right, he's sitting in most of his scenes, and when he's not sitting, he's drinking. And every time his character's drinking, I was like, "That's probably real booze." Like, I'll bet that's real hooch in that glass. Like he's just doing it right there on set.
Method acting.
It's so funny because we just covered Gladiator 2, and Gladiator 2 has this huge Russell Crowe shaped hole in it. Like the lack of Marcus Aurelius is a huge part of that movie. And you feel that like lack of magic from his performance. Like Paul Mescal does his best to bring it. And then just a couple weeks later, you like slump down to the dark corner of the movie Cineplex, and you see Kraven the Hunter like running on a small screen, and there he is. There's Russell Crowe, you know, alongside Alessandro Nivola, who's way too good for this movie and is doing some of the best acting in it. Really goofy and funny and odd, and like he seems to kind of understand the assignment. And then of course the late Christopher, well, sorry, I said the late Christopher Abbott. Christopher Abbott showing up late is really funny and feels a lot like you're watching Poor Things, and I can't recall what other films he's done that in, but it's always a good time when he shows up. Way too many villains, which is funny because our lead is supposed to be a villain, and maybe that's part of the point that like, you know, he's a good guy in a world full of villains, a la like Venom, and Morbius kind of does the same thing. It is funny that Kraven the Hunter is afraid of spiders, but seemingly nothing else, much less his father, which is where like the family dynamic kind of comes from in this movie. You're right. Like Russell Crowe is kind of this like Russian drug dealer hunter guy, and he's like teaching his sons to hunt. And then one of them gets brutally attacked by a CGI lion and becomes Kraven the Hunter, which nobody else can figure out, even though their last name is Kravinoff. It's really funny. Like I figured for sure somebody would at least. I thought somebody would acknowledge that. Like at least once, one of them would go Kravinoff. I can't believe we didn't put that together. Like never in the script do they ever actually point at the gag. It's really funny, but it's horribly boring. Nothing happens in this movie, and when it does happen, it's horrible CGI, which is funny because they spent a lot of money on it. You just don't see any of that here. Like it's real odd, and I don't know if they like stumbled into this through reshoots or like it's just an amalgamation of bad on top of worse. Like what happened in production to get this movie like this?
Its biggest sin is being boring. It's supposed to be an action comic book movie, and somehow it's 2 hours long. If this were 90 minutes, it would work. I think it would work even just as camp. It is so long, and there are so many scenes where you get some action, and then there's like 10 minutes of people talking in rooms, and then you'll get some action, and then another 10-15 minutes of people talking in rooms. Like, somehow it is so boring. The first act, after the opening scene, when we flash back and we get the origin story, we're with the young kids the entire first act. After that, like, none of the stars are in really that first act except Russell Crowe. And I have this theory that they're trying to save money by, they're like, if we have a big cast and everyone only gets a little bit of screen time, we don't have to pay as much as if you had Russell Crowe like the entire time. So that's my theory, because not only are none of the stars in like that first third, including Aaron Taylor Johnson, but then throughout the rest of the movie, you're jumping between people, and you have a lot of the important people not on screen, and I think it's all for budgetary reasons.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of like high-rise office buildings with like fancy lights and like wood paneled walls, and like a cool paperweight on that glass desk that our characters are talking over for like most of the movie. And then of course we get like Alessandro Nivola's like server room hideout that kind of looks like it's in a cave but isn't. And like I said, you end up having a bit of fun with him, but Christopher Abbott kind of swings in as a protagonist or an antagonist that doesn't really get like I think his due. And there's kind of some larger works hinted at. There's a scientist in New York that some of our villains reference that is real great and can do anything for you. And Kraven's like, who is this scientist character? And makes you wonder that like maybe there was more to this. In fact, the movie kind of implies that there's more story to tell, which is weird because Sony seems to be putting a pause on all these, and as far as we know, is not going to be making any for the immediate future. But Lofty. I don't think it had a post-credit sequence. I didn't stick around. I got out of there as fast as I could. Oh my god,
no,
I'd rather do anything
there's
than
not.
be in the theater for. Okay, well, good. I'm glad I didn't miss anything. I think Ariana DeBose is horribly wasted. Her character Calypso
Doesn't show up till Act 2.
Yeah, and is a very complicated character who the movie does not give any real oxygen to. Like, she is like a mystic, lawyer, warrior, archer, friend of Kraven the Hunter, but
You'll find out in the sequel.
Yeah, like she's really should not be in this movie. Like most of us shouldn't, and mostly like Aaron Taylor Johnson, dude. I don't know his accent. I could not play. Because he's British. You said this already. He's British, but he's supposed to be doing a Russian American.
But
it's a Russian,
but for some reason,
man who has an American accent.
They chose not to do Russian accents for the kids, so he's really just doing an American accent. But it's not consistent.
Dude, it's like it's ADR'd. Like, it's real bad, and it's like it makes you wonder how a movie like this gets made because it wasn't cheap. And they did a lot of marketing for it. But then late in the game, Sony originally pulled it back from like the 4,000 theaters that Madam Web ran in to like 3,000. Like, they seem to know that like, okay, this is not a banger. We're going to kind of quietly transition into whatever's next in Spider-Man movies, I guess. Is this the death knell of the Sony Universe films? Are we not getting another Morbius? Are we ever going to see the fabled team up of Madam Web and Kraven?
There's allegedly some sort of fourth Spider-Man movie in development, which is a Sony and Sony Marvel / Disney Marvel co-production. And I mean, that's the thing. They own the rights. They got to use Spider-Man. They got to get Spider-Man into these movies. They're just really taking too long. And I think one of the biggest crimes that this movie also commits is that it seems like it's a shame to be a comic book movie. You don't really get any of the comic book stuff, like the big fight between the Rhino and Kraven that you see in the trailers. It happens in like the last 10 minutes. And that stuff is pretty cool. That's like this. It's like, but we don't get any of that earlier in the movie. Like, I'm like, where is all like the superhero stuff that I came to see? None of it is happening. And it's almost like it's a shame to be that kind of movie. And it was like, no, I wanted to be like a John Wick or, just a generic action movie. It feels like it's really not, like it's ashamed of its comic book origins.
Yeah, it's funny. Madam Web kind of pulls that same trick. Like, in the marketing, they showed a lot of like Sydney Sweeney in this like spider outfit and like a couple of the other girls. And it turns out like that's not actually what's going on in that movie. And Kraven the Hunter pulls that same trick. Like, he didn't really get his big dumbass vest till like late in the game. And you'd think like that's like the trademark vest, but it looks so awful on Johnson that they just like hide it and just put it like way late in the movie, and it's like, it's like he's putting on the suit for the first time kind of thing. Also, I want to mention, I feel bad for Aaron Taylor Johnson, just in general. His physique is horrifically shredded in this movie. He looked like he's in physical pain in a
Juice,
couple points. Like,
juicing.
dude, he's so.
Guys,
Oh my
he's got
god,
to be on the juice.
my man has not eaten sugar in 9 years. Like, he cannot be well regulated. He's got to be going to therapy. Like, it just seems like a mess. It's like a movie made by a studio with no soul, no creative identity behind this. Like, it's just like put from machine to paper. It's like if AI made a comic book movie. Like, just my god.
Yeah, it's bad. It's not connecting with anyone. $11 million is, I mean, you have indies that make more than that on opening weekend. So, yeah, it's real bad. And I mean, I've seen the marketing everywhere. We've had to sit through the trailer so much, especially because it got delayed. It was supposed to come out in October. So man, yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it's not great. Seeing as this is likely the last of these Sony Spider villain movies we get for a minute, Andy, any words of advice for Sony if they were listening right now after having seen all of these joints? Like, what do they do next? Take a break, I'd say, and then come back with Spider-Man in these movies? Is that the advice?
I mean, look at what James Gunn is doing. He's committing to the bit. He's committing to the character, the style, the tone, all of that. And instead, we've been getting movie by committee at things that are pieced together. The ADR stuff, like this and Madam Web, just total messes, bad scripts, and the stars can't do all the heavy lifting. You got to have a movie that people are excited to see.
Yeah, like I think you need stuff that's better written. I think you need stuff that's just a little bit. You need to build a universe instead of trying to like thoughtfully place characters inside of one. You need to create one for us and create a place that people want to go, right? Like, you got to create that escape. Like, Kraven the Hunter ain't it, man. I don't want to be in Kraven the Hunter. I'd rather be anywhere else. Andy, would you recommend Kraven the Hunter?
Absolutely not. The hardest of passes. It's way too long. It's very boring. It's a total mess. The performances are bad. The story's nonsensical. The CGI is fine. The action is okay, but it's just punctuated between huge stretches of talking in rooms, and it's just so unbelievably boring. Goes nowhere. Not even worth watching the highlights on YouTube in 6 months. So hard pass.
Yeah, big skip. Best way to watch this movie is in short clips on TikTok. Like, anything worth seeing will be posted there, I think. Goofy Russell Crowe or like some dumb thing Aaron Taylor Johnson does. Otherwise, pass. Like, there's nothing here, man. It's nothing here. It's not worth it. It's a bummer. It's a bummer for JC Chandor. It's a bummer for Aaron Taylor Johnson. I think there's a lot of talent in this movie. I just don't think it was put together by people who, I don't know, had any sort of like cohesive vision for it. It's a bummer. I think performances are adamant where possible. I think people understand that they're getting a paycheck. It's Kraven the Hunter. Anyway, we should move on to something bigger, something more exciting. All right. And I wish I had bigger visuals for this. I do, but I don't. It's pretty Spartan this year. However, our opinions are authentic, and I'm really pleased with what we've come up with. Every year we have a funny way of introducing this. It never quite goes the same. This year, I'm sure, will be different too. 2024 is a new year, so that means new list. Andy, what are we talking about here?
We're talking about our top 10 films of the year of 2024. It's a little difficult because there's still like 5 movies that need to come out that we want to see. Things like Nosferatu, The Brutalist, Queer, A Complete Unknown. These movies aren't coming out. They're coming out in the next 2 weeks, and we're just not going to get around to them. So we got to go with the films that we've seen and that have come out. We're also going to be visiting our top 5 of the decade. Yes, we are 5 years halfway through the 2020s, and so we've also compiled a list of our favorite films of the last 5 years. Just a top 5 list, very short. We also have, of course, honorable mentions, worst of the year, and disappointments. So the way we're going to do this is, Zach, you start with your top 10, start at 10 and go up. And if we have anything that doubles, I'll jump in on that film at the time. So what's your number 10 of the year of 2024?
Before I jump into my number 10, I just want to say really quick that last year I think we had pretty different lists. They weren't too similar. And this year, I think we have like 6 or 7 of the same movies, though in wildly different orders, which I think is meaningful. 2024 was a great year at the movies. Like, great year at the movies, dude. And like, we still may not be done. Nosferatu may be slipping in here. Complete Unknown could be a banger. Here's Chalamet's real good. But for now, here's what we got. Number 10 for top 10 2024. It's Megalopolis, baby. And I know, what do you mean Megalopolis? What do you mean Megalopolis is going on the list? But I tell you, last year I thought my list was a little too generic. It felt like something Rolling Stone would have put together. It was like, yeah, just the top 10 movies of the year. And I thought, no. I want this to be personal. I want this to be meaningful. And when I look back at 2024, dude, I think Megalopolis is going to be in there. Like, I'm never going to forget the experience of seeing that movie in a theater. And like, if that's not what a top 10 list is for, then what are we doing here? It was an honorable mention, though, for most of the year. I do want to say it's a late game ad. Do I go to your number 10, or do I just keep going up my list? How do we want to
you keep going? This? Megalopolis was was under my honorable mentions. So what's your number 9?
A great honorable mention. Number 9 is Wicked. Barely sneaking in a late game ad with Wicked, but it's charming. And I know there's film people out there that are like, the color looks bad. It's washed out. Nah, man, you're washed out. Wicked's a lot of fun. It's a solid couple hours of the movies.
Yeah, Wicked is great. Wicked is mine number 5. I had a little bit higher up. But yeah, I was really surprised by it. Like I said, I was not a fan of the original stage musical at all. It was like played ad nauseum in the mid 2000s. Was not really looking forward to it and was really blown away. What's your number 8?
Number 8 is Longlegs. Had a lot of people say Longlegs is overrated. It's marketing. Nah, dude. There was a buzz in that theater when I saw that movie. It was like early opening weekend. Everybody was stoked for Longlegs. People were gasping in their chairs. Like, Longlegs was cool, man. If I put Skinamarink on my list in 2023, I feel like Longlegs almost has to have a cozy little horror spot in 2024. And not the last horror movie I got on the list. I got some good ones here.
Longlegs was was also on my honorable mentions. You're number 6.
Cuckoo Rock, dude. I really thought Cuckoo was going to be smaller than it was, and it's an intimate picture, but thoughtful, funny, emergent, different, good. Cuckoo rocked. Had a ton of fun with Cuckoo.
Yeah, great performance by Hunter Schafer as a great final girl, and just a real interesting, creepy pick for sure. You're number 5.
Kinds of Kindness from Yorgos Lanthimos. I wish I had been able to revisit this one before we did this list. I haven't had the chance. I've rewatched a few of these. Didn't get to Kinds of Kindness, but man, what a great time. Talk about a movie where like I never knew where it was going. The whole time we were watching it in theater, I was like, I have no idea what's happening next. Like, you can't buy that kind of energy.
Yeah, this was Yorgos Lanthimos follow-up from Poor Things, not 6 months later. Really bizarre film, but also it's kind of a fable. Has to do with the kinds of favors you get, like kind of beware of the kindness that people show you. And Emma Stone, who I think only works with you, Lanthimos now moving forward. I'm gonna jump over to my and do my 10 through 5. My number 10 was Kinds of Kindness, which we just talked about. My number 9, The Apprentice, which was probably movie that was shunned by everyone, which is of course a biopic about Donald Trump, which everyone wanted to stay away from. No one wanted to talk with Sebastian Stan about this. He is brilliant in that role. It's very difficult, and it covers a long period of time, but it's also, and I said this on our original review, it's an indictment not only of the man but of the system that creates a monster like this. Jeremy Strong plays his lawyer Roy Cohn, that shows him the ropes of kind of how to get everything you want and get everything done underhandedly. Kind of comes to regret that role, but I think it was a really brilliant film that's really stuck with me.
Ton of fun with The Apprentice. We covered it just a few weeks ago on the show. Love Jeremy Strong in that movie. I'm a Succession head, so I can't help it. But The Apprentice is good stuff, dude. I think people were way too harsh on that movie. Like, people have been weird about it. Variety's Actors on Actors won't talk about it. I know it's political. I get it came out during an odd time. I hope time will be kind to The Apprentice, because I think it's a cool movie. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in it. What's your number 8?
The Wild Robot. Which was the animated feature from a couple of months ago about Roz, the robot that gets kind of accidentally spilled out into the woods and ends up raising a Gosling and becoming a mother figure. And that movie is about motherhood and the difficulty and the strangeness of it, the sheer unknownness of it all. Incredible score, incredible animation, and just really heartwarming story about like working together, setting our differences aside. Probably the best animated thing that is probably going to get overshadowed by Disney at a lot of these awards things. But yeah, I loved that movie.
Yeah, folks who listened last week will remember when I was slamming Moana 2 and saying that I would rather have 5 mid Disney originals than one Disney sequel like Moana 2. I understand it's making money, but my God, it lacks originality, it lacks soul. Wild Robot has those things out of DreamWorks. Of course, it's an adaptation from a book, but a lot of their work is. Like, the fact is it's new, it's different. My God, it's got an art style that speaks to me, all right? It says something, for God's sake. It's got feeling, it's got soul. Wild Robot's a good time. It may be the best animated feature of the year, I agree. What's your number 7?
I saw the TV Glow, and this is number 3 on yours.
Number 3, baby.
Yeah, so it's high up. This of course is the coming of age trans allegory by relatively new director Jane Schönbrunn, which starred Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne. A really shocking kind of movie. It's one of these things I went into it not knowing what it was about at all, seeing the trailer and still not knowing what it was about. But it's about a lot of things, about nostalgia. It's primarily about the fear of not being yourself all of your life, which is kind of what we see happen to the main character. And incredible visual storytelling, some really kind of scary parts, and it's a really powerful film on a very small budget.
Yeah, I actually rewatched TV Glow just a few weeks ago, and it's awesome. And honestly, I'd forgotten kind of how horrifying it is. Like, I think I had kind of looked at it with rose-colored glasses, like, oh, it's an allegory. It's about somebody who finds themselves. But dude, it is like striking to the soul how close that movie can hit to home for people who feel stifled like in their life, who feel like maybe they should have taken a different path or could do something differently or should speak up when they don't. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how affecting that movie is. Like, very pleased to have it at 3 on my list. Excited to talk more about it. What's your number 6?
Challengers, which is your number 4.
Number 4.
This, of course, is Luca Guadagnino's film from the fall, and it was pushed. It was supposed to come out, I think last year, something like that. It got delayed, but it finally did come out. And this was, of course, a tennis movie with Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Faced, about a tryst and decades-long love story between the three. So much style, had so much to say about relationships and careers, and it was just a fun movie. Banging soundtrack by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. That's my number 6.
Yeah, Challengers was my number 4 pick, and I know we'll get into my 5th in a second, but Challengers rocks. So much fun. Electric soundtrack. I hope it wins soundtrack of the year. Probably won't at the Oscars, but like, dude, Challengers, awesome. Incredible performances. Love it. I think it's on Prime right now. I think you can actually go watch it like right now if you got it. So go check out Challengers if you missed it. Check out our review if you missed that too. Number 5 through 1, right? Is that next?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Number 5 for me is Dune Part 2. It's got to be Dune Part 2. I feel like people forget about this one. I feel like it's getting a weird slot at the Oscars because the music is not getting the noms it should. And then it's kind of like the first one, but like Dune Part 2 is huge, man. And like delivers on so much of the promise of Dune Part 1. Most importantly, it's an emergent plot with a character path that I didn't expect. It's rare that a movie ends up going away that the protagonist is not just like God's green earth good. You know what I mean? He's complicated. He's interesting. Timothée Chalamet. He's got something going on. You've got Dune Part 2 a little higher on your list, Andy.
Yeah, Dune Part 2 is my number 1 of the year. I was so stoked for this all year. We had to wait 3 years for Dune Part 2. It got pushed from the fall to the spring, but that's fine. Survived it. An epic in sci-fi filmmaking. Denis Villeneuve cannot miss. He's allegedly making Dune Messiah next. We'll see how that comes together. But man, it's rare to land the plane. Dune Part 1 is an incredibly solid start. He finishes the story in style. In Part 2, it was a cultural moment, made a lot of money. Yeah, I hope it's up for some awards. What is your number 4?
Challengers, which we already talked about, and I saw the TV Glow at number 3. Both bangers, would recommend. Obviously, they're on my list. Number 2 for me is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I think it has to be Furiosa. I've revisited Furiosa since, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I enjoyed it quite as much as I did in theater. Could be the sound, could be the visuals. But I tell you, I cannot recall the feeling I had watching that movie in theaters. It was like it was kid in the candy store stuff. Like it was that kind of excitement, like electric in a bottle feeling that like you just don't get from any other art. Like incredibly special. I'm so stoked I watched it. God, I hope George Miller makes 9 more of these movies, and I doubt he will. But you know, God willing.
Yeah, Furiosa was my number 3. Super excited for this. I wore black face paint on my forehead to the screening so I could look like one of the imperators, the drivers in the thing. Really enjoyed it. It's a shame that it bombed and it has not found an audience, and it's kind of getting snubbed at the awards, but it's definitely one of my favorites of the year. Give us your number 1.
Number 1, it's The Substance, baby. It's got to be The Substance. It can't not be The Substance. I had nightmares about The Substance. I have seen memes about The
I love it.
Substance for months. I have listened to podcasts where people have casually joked there's somebody with a guest that lost weight that it looks like you took The Substance. The Substance, like there's me before The Substance and there's me after The Substance.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's the point. And I don't know if there's any movie that's affected me in 2024 like The Substance has. Like, I gotta rewatch it. I haven't seen it since we saw it in theaters. Like, I think you went and saw it like the next day, right?
I saw
Didn't
it
you go
twice,
see?
that's right,
Dude,
yeah.
that's how you did the same thing with Nope. I remember when you went and saw Nope the day after you saw it before. It was like, oh my god, it's a certified banger from Dr. Draper. What about you?
Well, first off, The Substance was my number 2. Definitely loved that film. So striking, so haunting. Incredible performance by Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley. Who's Dennis Quaid as well.
Oh,
Margaret
Quaid.
Qualley having a great year. She's in 4 pretty major films this year. My top 5. At number 5, Love Lies Bleeding, which is the new entry from Rose Glass, which starred, I'm going to blank on all these, Katie O'Brien and Twilight.
Kristen Stewart.
Thank
And Ed
you.
Harris. I gotta feel like you've been like a glossary this segment. I gotta help out. Yeah, go ahead.
This, of course, is a lesbian love story / a little bit of a revenge. There's a lot of violence, lots of just man, it's a real gritty movie. You can just like feel it, and it's one of the most striking things I've seen. And I feel like it's gotten lost in the conversation a little bit because it came out earlier in the year, but really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I've got Love Lies Bleeding in my honorable mentions, which we'll get to in just a minute. Really cool movie. Not enough people saw it. I don't think it'll get enough attention. It's the kind of movie that, like, in a less dominating year, like maybe 2020, I think it would have done better. But like, there's just so much good stuff coming out. Like Rose Glass's like intimate story kind of got a little buried. Super fun, super weird, a little gross, sweaty. Love Lies Bleeding is a good time.
Wicked was my number 4. Furiosa my number 3. I guess that's the rest of them we've talked to. My number 2, The Substance, and number 1, Dune Part 2. So what a year!
Dude, what a year. Incredible year at the movies. Like, I think Dune Part 2 is an incredible pick. Furiosa's bonkers. Like, we've been putting this list together over the course of the year, whereas like in previous years, usually like the last month in December, I scramble and try to like put together my top 10. And this year I've been adding slowly over time. Substance was an early like as soon as I saw it, I was like, I think it's top 3, maybe number 1. And then those have been dancing around. I added Megalopolis last week. It was a late ad. Like I didn't know what to put in, but I couldn't help it. We got to get into honorable mentions. I mean, almost as good as the top, right? What do you got?
Yeah, I'm just going to blow through these. So we have Late Night with the Devil, Long Legs, Beetlejuice, Megalopolis, Joker 2, and Civil War. Again, great films that just didn't quite stick out. Late Night with the Devil, great performance by David Dalmatian. Beetlejuice. I'm not a fan of the first film, so I was actually pleasantly surprised. Joker 2, doing some brave things, didn't find an audience. I actually had a friend who texted me today that watched it and they were glad that I had recommended it because they had heard so many negative things, and they actually ended up enjoying it. And Civil War, Alex Garland's a kind of political film from the spring that had some interesting ideas, a little bit divisive.
I got way too many honorable mentions, but again, it's been a banger year. I got 8, and I'm going to blow through them faster. If we had 2 more slots, it'd just be another top 10 of different movies that I
Yeah.
also liked a lot this year, but in no particular order. Late Night with the Devil, Lisa Frankenstein, Drive Away Dolls, In a Violent Nature, Trap, Maxine, The Apprentice, and Love Lies Bleeding. Andy, on your list, I think I was surprised most to see Beetlejuice, although notably Maxine didn't make an appearance, and I figured for sure that would sneak in there somewhere.
I was a little disappointed by Maxine. It didn't quite stick the landing of that trilogy that I had hoped. But it's a fun time.
I had Maxine as a top 10 for most of the year. And only recently did it fall into the honorable mentions list just because I was like, I don't know. Also had Late Night with the Devil on there forever. Trap is weird, but you know what? I had a fun time watching it, and I think that's not for everybody, but it was for me. And yeah, now we got to talk about worst of the year. The biggest bombs, the fattest L's, the hugest blunders, right? The career enders. Andy, what were your worst films of the year?
Argyle, which was a $200 million Apple film, which was long and boring and was a bomb. Madam Web, of course, which was terrible, but also funny and meme worthy in a lot of ways. Horizon, an American Saga Part 1, the Kevin Costner epic that everyone's forgot about. Huge bomb. They're supposed to, the second film was also already supposed to come out. I don't even know what's happening with that. Films 3 and 4 are definitely not happening. And I'm going to also throw in my disappointments of the Crowe remake being pretty bad.
That's great. That's actually a great list. I die every time I see Horizon on there because Horizon is supposed to have so much
Everyone
promise,
forgets about
and it's supposed to be so grand, right? Like my worst of the years are one-offs. So same with most of yours. Like I got Argyle, The Crow, and Kraven the Hunter. It was Madam Web all year until I saw Kraven this weekend and thought, my God, it's even worse. Like it's got to be Kraven the Hunter. At least Madam Web I could recommend to stream for fun with your friends. Kraven the Hunter, like I can't even give it that. But Horizon is a worst of the year is hilarious. I love that you're just putting it out front. 3 and 4 aren't even going to get made. Garbage series. Shut it down. Put Kevin Costner in the ground and make him take a nap forever.
Exactly.
Disappointments of the year. I haven't seen this, so I probably shouldn't be putting it on the disappointment list. But I moved it around just because I'd like to see it. Dude, I hear that new Lord of the Rings movie is a huge bummer. And at the beginning of the year, that was my most anticipated. That was like my 1 or 2 alongside the new Alien movie. And I didn't love the new Alien movie, but I don't think it was a disappointment. But apparently War of the Rohirrim is a big miss. And I need to watch it. And so with the big caveat, big asterisk next to me, Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim for disappointments. Now, top 5 of the decade. So far, right? The half of the decade we have that we know. A loose lip, the rough draft, as it were.
Right.
Do you want me to go first? You first? Where you at?
Well, I'll say this is a tough one because you're essentially looking at 50 movies trying to pick your top 5. And what I tried to do is I basically did my favorite from each year, which wasn't in the rules. You don't have to do it that way, but that's how I did. I'll start with my top 5, or my number 5 was The Green Knight. Dev Patel in the retelling of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. One of my favorite films. I have the tattoo of it on my inner forearm. Incredible piece, small. We kind of saw this coming out of the pandemic. Thoughts on the Green Knight?
I actually rewatched that this week, actually, so that worked out great. Green Knight's great, dude. Green Knight's a lot of fun. I forgot how intimate that movie can feel because like initially I remember it felt grand. Like he rides out on this adventure, he goes to these places, all these title cards with this rad font of like a kindness, and like he meets Lady Witherford or whatever her name is. Like I forgot how that journey feels really big. And when you go back and revisit it, you realize like it's so much more intimate. It's about death. It's about doom. It's about like learning to live with this axe hanging over your head, figuratively. I love that we went and saw David Lowery do a screening at Texas Theater and he answered questions about it. And I still think about some of his answers watching the movie. Like Green Knight rocks, dude. Green Knight's a ton of fun.
Give us your number 5.
My number 5 is I Saw the TV Club from this year. And I should say, while Andy's list is a bit more of like kind of his top favorites of the last years, like organized together, mine has much more recency bias, I find. Most of these movies are from like this year or last year, which I feel bad about. But dude, like I think COVID really put the brakes on a lot of stuff, and coming out of it, I think a lot of creativity really hit the gas and has come through with some incredible projects. So with that, my number 5 is I Saw the TV Globe. I had no particular order really, but dude, I can't stop thinking about this movie. And it's a movie that feels emergent through time. It feels prophetic. It's about the 90s. It's about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and being a kid in junior high, but also it's about living now and living in the time of Netflix and streaming and screens and what nostalgia does to us. It's about having dreams and what it means to live in a world where those don't come true. It's amazing. I think I Saw the TV Globe is really amazing. I hope it's still on my list in the next 5. I hope it sticks around. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is Tenet. I feel like you can't have a top 10 list or top 5 without Christopher Nolan. However, he wasn't Oppenheimer. I've really warmed to Tenet a lot. Of course, stars John David Washington as kind of an international spy, having to do with time travel. It's a lot of fun. It's a movie I can put on all the time and just put it on in the background. I can quote it. It's got a lot of really memorable scenes. The backward car chase, the big backwards fight at the end for kind of multiple entities. It's a lot of fun. Definitely, that's my favorite of 2020, and that's at my number 4.
I don't know if I can talk about horror in the new decade without talking about Skinamarink. I don't know if I can like work my way around what it means to be making new horror without talking about Skinamarink. And for that reason, Skinamarink is my number 4. Again, there are people out there who are going to say, no, it's divisive. It's different. Dude, I was terrified watching Skinamarink. I've been too scared to go back. Like, people say, oh, it's boring. Yeah, I guess for you, like, maybe you just don't get it. Like, I thought Skinamarink was great, dude. I thought Skinamarink was lo-fi. It's made on no money. It barely even qualifies as a film. And my God, what does it mean to make movies nowadays if we're not making something different and weird? It's from a YouTuber, for God's sake. He's one of us. He's one of us down here, huh? He doesn't have big budgets. He doesn't have big ideas. Like, he's got big heart. And he's got big, scary nightmares that he captures in Skinamarink. Kyle Ball, of course, who I'm talking about. That movie rocks. Skinamarink's my number 4. I don't know if it'll stick around till the end of the decade, but like for now, that's what I got.
I was absolutely shocked to see Skinamarink on it, but then I was like, you know what, that makes sense, and I can respect it. That was like my number 1 or 2 last year. My number 3 movie from 2022 is Nope, Jordan Peele's alien thing about spectacle and how we're all kind of subject to it. Not super scary. It's more of a sci-fi film, but just had some really incredible scenes, the aliens, the kind of, and just the themes of it. A lot of it, it is about race. It's about how legacies can be rewritten and erased if we're not careful, while also being a very kind of Steven Spielberg-esque sci-fi film.
Nope is amazing. It's the first 4K UHD I bought. It's the first one I've actually purchased to watch at home when I realized, I have an Xbox that can run it and an HDMI cable and the right TV. It's a whole thing. But Nope's presentation is amazing. And what I think I like the most about it is how effortlessly simple it is. It's such a simple movie, but it's also so wildly complicated. And like it's presented in a way that's just so plain, like, and so flat and so simple. But the way they conjure the night sky and like manage to make us feel like we are on a ranch surrounded by this creature in the clouds is fantastic. Like, I love the acting. I love everybody in it. No rocks. My number 3 is Dune. The first Dune. Dune from 2021. 2021 Dune. I know Dune Part 2 made my list here and made Andy's list too, a top 10, but Dune Part 1 is amazing. I had not seen the David Lynch film. I had always heard about the books being a big deal. I went and saw Dune Part 1 with Andy and another friend. And I remember by the time that movie hit credits, like just buzzing in my seat. I was like, I can't wait to talk about this. I can't wait to go tell every sci-fi head I know the new sheriff is in town. Dune is everything Star Wars should be. Dune is everything every great Star Wars like sci-fi epic should feel like. Like, it's amazing. It's an amazing picture. I'm so glad to have it on this list.
Dune makes my number 2 slot of the half decade. I kind of cheated. I have Dune Part 1 and 2 as one giant.
It's kind of a cheat a little.
It's like having Lord of the Rings on your top 10,
Yes, that's just like that.
Yeah, so yes, same. Dune Part 1 and 2. I have a hard time picking. They're both so good, both so enjoyable. Really incredible to see someone split that novel in the right place. And he talks about the first movie being about like kind of Paul's upbringing, and then the second one being kind of a total war kind of thing. So it's really interesting, the two bits. Give us your number. Oh, your number two.
Yeah, my number two is a instant classic. It's the kind of movie that I want to rewatch every year. It's perfect because it's a holiday movie. It's The Holdovers. Holdovers, I think, is one of the best films of the decade. I have revisited that film already a few times this holiday. I've shared it with family. They all like it, or at least they tell me they like it because they respect me enough to not tell me the truth. I think The Holdovers is amazing. I think that movie's so funny. Paul Giamatti. I think the world of that movie. I will be watching it every holiday. It is so great. It's on Prime right now. If you want to go back and revisit it, would recommend The Holdovers. I love that film.
Yeah, same instant classic. Loved it when we saw it when it came out last year. Shot in kind of an old school way. It's got that real grainy 1970s look, and it's shot in that 70s style. Very profound, but very funny. Great holiday film. I still need to watch this year. And my number one is The Zone of Interest, which was a very late entry last year. I don't think we saw it until January of this year, but technically it was a 2023 release. Probably the most important Holocaust film since Schindler's List. That's not an exaggeration at all. It, of course, follows the Hess family who's living right outside of Auschwitz, enjoying a normal family life. They cook, clean, eat, and but there are horrors going on in the background. You can hear screams and gunshots, and you hear the constant rumble of the crematoriums and the trains coming in, and it's about how these terrible things were carried out by very normal people, not people that we would think of as monsters or evil, just normal everyday people doing a job that was horrific. And it's one of the things that stuck with me all year, and definitely one of the best of the decade.
Yeah, Zone of Interest is amazing. And of all of the films we have on these lists, like when we talk about like top 5 of the decade and then what may be coming out in the future that might also fill out maybe a top 10 and what's to come, Zone of Interest is the one film I feel like should probably be bolted to the table. It's probably a film that will be a top 10 of the decade, whether you like it or not. I think it is difficult to talk about where we're headed without talking about it. Like, I think Zone of Interest is amazing. Amazing pick. I'm a little rattled it's not on my list, but mine's a little bit more objective. And in that same spirit, of talking about what has to be on a top 10 list of the decade, I don't think you get away with a top 10 without Christopher Nolan on there. I don't. You do. Yeah, you've got Tenet, and that's why I've got Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is on my list. I'm not sure that Oppenheimer is going to stay. But I think Christopher Nolan is too big to ignore at this stage. Like, having just come off of our Interstellar screening, which was incredible, he is a director that is he looms too large over the space. Like, I think he has too much impact at this stage. Like, he's like Tom Cruise in movies. Like, I can't talk about film in 2024 without at least mentioning Christopher Nolan. Like, he's like Denis Villeneuve. Like, he's huge. And in that way, like, I felt like something had to make the list here from him. I thought about what I'd liked most recently from him and how Oppenheimer, like, kind of continues to elude me. I've got it. I've watched it back a few times, but it's so big. And it's so large, and it's also so simple. My man shoots his shots in 2 takes. They do ADR at the end because the IMAX cameras are too loud. Like, they're simple productions, but man, they just feel so grand, and they look incredible. Like, it's presentation bigger and better. There's nobody doing it better than Nolan, I think. So that's top 5 of the decade. Good Lord, what a list, and what a time at the movies. Like, dude, incredible last couple of years to fill things out. Good God.
Yeah, it's been just to comment on Oppenheimer. After Tenet, some people thought that maybe Nolan was losing a step. Maybe he didn't have the sauce anymore. Tenet came out at a weird time. It was like mid-pandemic. It didn't really find an audience. No one was going to the movies. And so for him to come back swinging with Oppenheimer to make a 3-hour political thriller, which is largely people talking in rooms, and for everyone to be glued, that movie was just short of $1 billion, one of his highest grossing. And for the subject matter and the style, and for it to really connect with audiences was really incredible.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like I said, these last couple years have been particularly incredible in film, just because of, I think, coming out of the pandemic, bit of a lull, followed by people hitting the gas on production. Things are good. 2025 is looking good for sure. I think 2026 might be a banger year as well. But like, there's so much good stuff coming out. Best way to keep up with it all, of course, subscribe to Off Script. We do this every week. We like watching movies, and we like talking about them. So that's us. But also, go see stuff too. Support your local cinemas, for God's sake. They need it, all right? Like, go see films. Go see films in theaters when you can. Go see stuff you want to see. And maybe let us know what you think in the comments below, or wherever, a rating, or review, or what have you. But anyway, thanks for sticking around with us for another year. We got one more review to talk about before we wrap up 2024 here. I'm going to be taking the summary on this one, so please excuse my clumsy delivery. The film is The Piano Lesson. So, based on the August Wilson Pulitzer-prize winning play, The Piano Lesson is the story of a piano, really. That's owned by one family, one former slave family, I should say, and the brother and sister who are currently fighting over said piano. So let me set this up a little bit with story. It's 1911, and three brothers steal a piano from a slave owner, Sutter, in this southern town where they're from. They steal this piano, take off into the night, and one of the brothers doesn't make it. He gets essentially apprehended, we'll say, in violent fashion. Years later, it's 1937, and a brother and sister, Boy Willie, make sure I've got their names right, Boy Willie and Bernice, are quarreling over whether they should sell the family piano they've got or keep it, because this family piano has been handed down to them from generations, from their parents who stole the damn thing, right? Who carved it, who crafted it, because this isn't just a piano stolen from a slave owner. It was one that was particularly fond of and taken care of and crafted to contain all of this family's legacy in its carvings, right? Like their grandmother is imposed on there, and one of them is shown the son, and they've got these ornate wood carvings all over the thing. It's particularly important. And Boy Willie says, look, I've got to sell the piano to get our family farm and to start our fortune, right? I can build something here, and this piano is going to be the thing that funds me buying the land to get the farm. And Bernice, the sister, says, absolutely not. This is everything we have left. This is everything left of our family, and if we sell that, there's nothing left of them except us and what we remember. I'm not selling. It's a thing. It's a story about an object that has multiple shapes for the people around it. And it's fascinating because outside of these two characters, we've got a couple of uncles, right? We've got a whining boy, played by Michael Potts, and Doker, played by Samuel L. Jackson, who are a lot of fun and offer a lot of color to the performance. Additionally, we've got Ray Fisher as Lyman and Corey Hawkins as Avery, two external characters who are a delight. And of course, I should say Boy Willie is played by John David Washington, and Bernice is played by Danielle Deadwyler. The film is directed by Malcolm Washington, Denzel Washington's son, starring his brother, John David Washington. Andy, what do you think of The Piano Lesson?
Well, I wanted to first say that Denzel Washington has taken on this task of he wants to make film versions of August Wilson's play. He's already done this with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which we reviewed on the show, Fences, which I swear we reviewed on the show, but apparently not. I have seen that, though. And this is now the third one, The Piano Lesson. So he's kind of on a mission to get these made into film. Like many plays to film adaptations, it's a bit of a struggle because it's a lot of people in the same rooms, but it is incredibly well acted. We do have these different conflicts. You have John David Washington. He really wants to sell his piano and get some land, get it into the family, farm it. I know how to farm it, but there's sentimental value, there's history. Their parents and other relatives, their faces are carved into the piano. There's blood in the piano. And the other thing this movie does, which a lot of these plays do, is they bring up issues within specifically the Black community and things about women's expectations. There's a preacher character played by Corey Hawkins. Just a lot of different things. And I think one of the things that's most startling is how nonchalant they will talk about very horrible things, which is probably very true to life. They'll be like, oh yeah, we were all hanging out, and then they caught our friend and they lynched him, and we never saw him again. But I think I might get a new job on Tuesday. It's just like this very kind of, it's probably how a lot of oppressed people have had to discuss things. Either they are what they are. I think the performances are all stellar. I feel like John David Washington is a little bit in over his head. Everyone else just seems a little bit more seasoned on this kind of stage adaptation.
The tone, I think, is really what works well for me in this movie. Like, it's a particularly dark film. Like, you're right. Like, not only in conversation and presentation of like our family's history and where they come from, but also like the time they live in. Like, Boy Willie has come from the South, like from this farm that he kind of works with Lyman, his friend, and they talk about like just barely escaping down there. Lyman got shot in the stomach. Like, bad things have happened to them in the time they currently live in. And Doker and Whining Boy, they are both kind of the uncles. They are both cynical. They are both over it. They have been around the bend. They are trying to just stay out of it and get by best they can. Meanwhile, Bernice is like trying desperately to hold things up for her young daughter, like to try to get dressed nice for Corey Hawkins across the street, the preacher, who again is really funny. Everybody's got their own unique silhouette in this play. And Quinta Brunson, I think is how you say her name, the creator of Abbott Elementary, the television show, she has a great interview where she talked about writing and writing unique characters. She said, the best way to know how you write a unique character is if you dropped a $5 bill in the middle of your stage, every character in your scene should pick up that bill differently and do something differently in it. One might pick it up and be self-righteous. Hey, I've got to return this. Another might pick it up and say, hey, this is mine. I found this. Lucky me. Somebody might say this is a gift from God, right? Like this came down from the universe. And somebody else might say, hey, somebody could have lost this. We should take this seriously, guys. And that is our piano. Our piano is our $5 bill, and every character in this film has a different relationship with it. Doker, Samuel L. Jackson, wants nothing to do with it. Wants to wash his hands with it. He helped his brother steal it, and my God, his brother died for it. Whining Boy learned how to play piano. He actually gained a skill from this thing, and also is on the other side of his career, and also wants nothing to do with it because that piano brought him nothing but trouble, right? All the fame brought drink and brought debt, and it's bad. Bernice sees the value, the heritage of this thing. She wants to keep it. Boy Willie thinks it's the only legacy he's got and wants to try to sell it so he can build something with it, right? Like everybody has a different idea of where this thing should go. And most fascinatingly, on top of really fun cinematography from director Malcolm Washington, I love the way he will lock the camera to the piano when the piano moves. The piano gets a point of view. It's kind of amazing, and you would never get that in the stage adaptation. Like, it's specific thought to how to adapt this into film that is good and is thoughtful and gives this film personality, like much more so than the typical Netflix adaptation. I'm really pleased to say the piano lesson rises above what we normally see on the platform. This one is good. This is a good movie, at least for the first half. Because admittedly, I did start to fall off in kind of what would be part two of the play, I think, after intermission.
So one aspect of the story is the landowner James Sutter has died. He's fallen down a well, and it's kind of suspicious, and it's kind of implied that maybe he was pushed in that well, and maybe it was by Boy Willie. But the ghost of Sutter is also haunting this house. People see images and flashes of him upstairs. Doors slam, windows close, and so that's something else that's kind of overhanging a little bit of a supernatural part of this. And that's the other thing, is that our characters are very flawed. They're not perfect people just because they happen to be an oppressed people. Like we said, Whining Boy definitely has a drinking problem. There's more. There's womanizing. Like I just said, it's implied that Boy Willie pushed someone down the well, and it seems like lots of people have been getting pushed down wells. So it's another aspect to the story. It makes our characters more complicated, and our story about this looming something is kind of overhanging this family that they need to resolve to be able to move on.
Yeah, like it's a story about a group of people who are very desperately struggling, and the unique ideas a couple of them have on how to get out of it and how to get each other to agree or go along or stand up for yourself and say, hey, no, this isn't the right way. And also in the middle of that, there's also some unique paranormal things happening, which I didn't expect. And I think probably plays better in the play. In the movie, like the first half of it, you get a little bit of the paranormal stuff, which is exciting, honestly, and kind of locks you in because I didn't expect it to go there tonally. And then the second half, it plays a bit more of a part. And I was almost a little disappointed because I so much enjoyed just the drama of Danielle Deadwyler and John David Washington having it out. Like the whole first act of this film is like a I don't know, like a hot plate. Like it's just getting hotter and hotter, and the water is starting to boil, and you know it's going to happen. They're going to have this conflict, and they finally get into it at the end of Act One, and it's awesome. I swear to God, Washington's like channeling his dad. It's coming through, dude. I can feel it. Danielle Deadwyler is blowing the hinges off the scene. Like she's so great in it, right? And then it goes to where we feel like kind of the midpoint of the movie would be. We kind of get into our intermission. And the second half, this has to start to wrap up. We have to start to curb our conflict back in. And part of the problem is Piano Lesson is tracking conflict that is simply too large for a play to handle. Like, so it's difficult to find resolution for characters that are clearly struggling. How do you wrap up a play where everybody is in pain and the pain is generational and it's deep? I think it does a creative kind of thing at the end. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't expect it to go there. But I enjoyed the first half so much more than the second, and I feel like if I had gone and seen the play, that's how I'd feel. I'd come out of intermission and been like, "That's amazing! I can't wait to see part two." And then I'd be like walking in my car like, "Part two is all right. Part one though is a banger." And like that first hour really glues you in, like in a way that most Netflix films don't. I'm really impressed from Malcolm Washington here. Great feature debut.
Yeah, this is another one that's going to be up for awards nominations. Like I said, the acting it's like a who's who cast, and it is great to see John David Washington do something that's smaller, do something that really kind of probably stresses his acting chops. He's done major films, worked with Chris Nolan, and the stage is different, and so this is kind of forcing him to do something a little bit different. But the performances all around are incredible.
Yeah. Understated music, big visuals for what's here, and I'm impressed at the bouncing between like lockdown tripod shots in this film and then like handheld for flashback. Makes it feel homey, makes it feel unique, like gives it a sort of energy to it. And I guess I'm really impressed at the resets, dude. Like they are constantly resetting the camera to move over here, to shoot over Jackson's shoulder, to shoot like this look at Boy Willie's throwing at Bernice. Like real good stuff, man. Like thoughtful adaptation of a stage play, like more so than I think. Like I kind of struggled with like The Color Purple because so many of those musical numbers are just like right out of the play. We're just going to set the camera and shoot it. This gets a lot more involved, feels a lot more intimate. And while it doesn't necessarily feel like it's made for film, it definitely still feels like a stage adaptation. It's a great outing from Washington. It's hard to believe this is his first feature. Looking forward to what he does next. He probably needs to get into horror. They should put him in theaters. I would have liked to have seen this on the screen. I think it would have helped too. Like seeing it at home is good, but dude, Piano Lesson rocks. Any other thoughts or recommendations, Andy?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend the Piano Lesson?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of kind of the best films I think I have seen all year. It's an adaptation of a classic play, Pulitzer-prize winning play. He also won the Pulitzer for Fences as well. So, but it's an incredible work, and it's again this thing that Denzel Washington is doing with bringing these alive to film is really incredible. But great performances. Important kind of subject matter. It's a little long at a full 2 hours, and definitely feels like a play, but highly recommend.
Yeah, I think Piano Lesson's good. I think it's a good one to throw on. It's got sauce, dude. Like in a way I didn't expect. Like I kind of sat down and threw this on, like got my phone out, hopped on Twitter for the first minute or two. I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. And like just from kind of its opening moments, I was like, all right, big visuals, this is good. And before I knew it, like 25 minutes had gone by. I was like, okay, all right. Like there's something going on here. This is a good Netflix feature. Like it's not bad. Piano Lesson's a good time. Would recommend. Give it a go if you're looking for something quieter, something unique. Kind of stay in and do something different movie. Like not a bad time. Good performances. That's the Piano Lesson. And that's Off Script episode 276. Good Lord. I'm predicting we're going to have to come back in January and make maybe a couple adjustments to the top 10. We might have to move a couple things around depending on what happens this Christmas because there's supposed to be some bangers. What are we watching next week, Andy?
So we're actually off until the new year. We'll be back January 7th, so taking a few weeks off here. But we'll be back with Nosferatu, which comes out Christmas Day. Also A Complete Unknown, which is the Bob Dylan biopic. Also Christmas Day. So those will be the two. Some FYI releases. This Friday we have Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Mufasa the Lion King both coming out on December 20th. Those are going to go head to head. Baby Girl, which is the Nicole Kidman, Harris Dickinson, not rom-com, but romantic drama movie that comes out Christmas Day as well if you're looking forward to that, and we'll be back with maybe our most anticipated of 2025 to talk about. But next time you hear us, we'll have Nosferatu and A Complete Unknown.
That's going to be a banger episode, like wall to wall gas. I can't wait. It's going to be great. So yeah, stick around for that. If you want to get a notification when that episode goes live, easiest way to do that is just hit the bell icon. If you're on YouTube, I think it's down that way. Of course, you can subscribe to Offscript to get episodes delivered straight to your phone as soon as they come out. You can subscribe on audio services, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia. Love our audio listeners. You can subscribe on YouTube where you see the video version of the show. Always a great time on video. We got live looks at articles and trailers and us. You can see our ugly mugs. It's great. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. So I'll speak for myself. My ugly mug. Excuse me, Andy. You're good. You look great. Twitter, TikTok. We're on all the usual social media places. And you can follow us over there. Check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com. You can email us correspondence direct at offscriptfilmreview, mail at offscriptfilmreview.com. What an episode. My God, this ran longer than I meant for it to, but it's fine. It's got the top 10 of the year in there. It's a good time. From all of us at Offscript, the home Bolt Cinema, here's 2024. My God, what a year. And thanks for listening. Offscript, the home of Bolt Cinema. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for listening.